Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11, Chapter 17, Lord Kṛṣṇa's description of the Varṇāśrama system. Previously, the Supreme Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa had assumed the form of Haṁsa and glorified the duties of the brahmacārī and gṛhastha orders. In this present chapter, Lord Kṛṣṇa further describes these matters to Uddhava. After Uddhava inquires from Śrī Kṛṣṇa about the duties of the social and religious orders of the Varṇāśrama society, the Lord replies that in the first age, Satya-yuga, there was only one social order called Haṁsa. In that age, men were automatically dedicated to pure devotional service from their very birth, and since everyone was perfect in all respects, the age was called Kṛta-yuga. The Vedas were then manifest in the form of the sacred syllable Om, and the Supreme Lord was perceived within the mind in the form of the four-legged bull of religion. There were no formalized process of sacrifice, and the sinless people who were naturally inclined to austerity simply engaged in meditation on the personal form of the Lord. In the following age, Tretā-yuga, there became manifest from the heart of the Supreme Personality of Godhead the three Vedas, and from them the three forms of the sacrificial fire. At that time, the system of 4 varnas and 4 āśramas, which prescribes material and spiritual duties for the different members of society, appeared from the bodily limbs of the Lord. According to how the social divisions took birth from higher and lower features of the Lord's body, they became endowed with higher and lower qualities. After this description, Lord Kṛṣṇa explains the natures of persons in each of the 4 varnas and of those who are outside the limits of the varnas. He also describes those qualities that pertain to humanity in general. Members of the higher orders are qualified to accept second birth. After receiving the sacred thread initiation, they should go to live in the Gurukula, the home of the spiritual master. With a pacified mind, the student brahmacārī should absorb himself in the study of the Vedas. He should keep matted hair and is forbidden to wash his teeth, prepare a nice seat for himself, talk when bathing or evacuating, cut his hair and nails or at any time pass semen. He must regularly perform worship at the three junctures of the day, and must render devotional service to his spiritual master in a spirit free from envy. The brahmacārī must offer to the Guru whatever food and other things he obtains by begging. He accepts for his maintenance whatever remnants of the Lord he is granted. He should render menial service to the spiritual master by massaging his feet and worshipping him, and should avoid all sense gratification and strictly maintain the vow of celibacy. With his mind, body, and words, he should worship the Supreme Lord in the form of the Super Soul in the way prescribed for him. For brahmacharis, seeing or touching women, and conversations or sports in the company of women are absolutely disallowed. Cleanliness and ritual purification by water should be observed by members of all the spiritual orders of society. Everyone is also advised to always remember that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Soul dwelling within the hearts of all. After studying all the different aspects of the Vedas, a Brahmana who has material desires may take permission from his spiritual master and enter family life. Otherwise, if he has no material desire, he may become a vanaprastha or sannyasi. The proper order of succession should be followed in changing from one spiritual order to the next. One who wishes to enter the household order should accept a wife who is of the same social class, who is not objectionable, and who is somewhat younger in age than he. The obligatory duties of the 3 classes who are twice born, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, are worship of the Lord, study of the Vedas, and giving charity. The occupation duties of accepting charity, teaching others, and performing sacrifice for others are the privilege of the Brahmins alone. If a Brahmana considers that his consciousness is contaminated by engaging in these occupations, he may sustain his existence by collecting grains from the fields. If he is disturbed by poverty, the Brahmana may out of necessity accept the business of a Kshatriya or Vaishya, but he should never take the occupation of a Shudra. In a similar situation, a Kshatriya may take the occupation of a Vaishya and a Vaishya that of a Shudra. But when the emergency has passed, it is not fitting to continue earning one's living by a lower occupation. A Brahmana who is properly fixed in his personal duty rejects all insignificant material desires, always serves the Vaishnavas, and is under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The householder should study the Vedas every day and maintain his wards with money honestly earned by his own occupation. As far as possible, he should execute worship of the Lord by ritual sacrifices, remaining unattached to material life and fixed in devotion to the Supreme Lord. The householder may finally take the order of Varṇāśrama so that he can fully involve himself in the Lord's worship. If he has a grown son, he may directly take the renounced order of sannyas, but persons who are excessively lusty after women, who have no proper discrimination, and who are extremely attached to wealth and possessions remain perpetually in anxiety over the welfare of their family members and are doomed to take their next birth in the lower species of life. Text 1 to 2. Śrī Uddhava vacha yastvayabhihataha purvam dharmastvat bhakti lakshanaha varṇāśrama charavatam sarvesham dvipadamapi yathanushtiyamanena tvayi bhaktirnirnam bhavet sadharmenari ravindaksha tanmamakyatum arhasi. Translation. Śrī Uddhava said, My dear Lord, previously you described the principles of devotion service that are to be practiced by followers of the Varṇāśrama system and even ordinary, unregulated human beings. My dear lotus-eyed Lord, now please explain to me how all human beings can achieve loving service unto you by the execution of their prescribed duties. Purport. Lord Kṛṣṇa has already elaborately explained the process of Jnana-yuga, Bhakti-yuga, and Ashtanga-yuga. Now Uddhava inquires how those inclined toward Karma-yuga can achieve the perfection of life, Krishna consciousness. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Kṛṣṇa describes that he is personally the creator of the Varṇāśrama system, Chaturvarnyam Maya Trishtam Gunakarma Vibhagashaha. Therefore, the ultimate goal of the Varṇāśrama system is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, one should become a devotee of the Lord and learn the process of pure devotion service. The easiest method of achieving pure devotion service is by the association of pure devotees of the Lord. If one submissively and faithfully associates with pure devotees, one can immediately achieve the perfection of life. A Krishna conscious person is not required to execute all the formalities of the Varṇāśrama system, because a Krishna conscious person absorbed in love of Godhead automatically gives up all sense gratifications and mental speculation. Those human beings who do not follow the Varṇāśrama system are here referred to as Dvipadam or two-legged. In other words, one who does not follow the religious path of life is known to be human only by the possession of two legs. Even ordinary animals and insects are eagerly engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The human being, however, is distinguished from such lower forms of life by his capacity to perform religious and ultimately the love of God, to love God in pure Krishna consciousness. Text 3 to 4. Pura kila mahabaho dharmam paramakam prabho yattena Haṁsa rupena brahmanebhyattamadava saidanim summahata kalenam mitra karshana na prayo bhavita matra lokya praganushashitaha. Translation. My dear Lord, Almighty Armed One, previously in your form of Lord Haṁsa, you spoke to Lord Brahma those religious principles that bring supreme happiness to the practitioner. My dear Madhava, now much time has passed, and that which you previously instructed will soon practically cease to exist. O subduer of the enemy. Text 5 to 6. Vakta karta vita nanyo dharmasya chuta te bhuvi sabhayam api vairincham yatra murti daraha kalaha kartra vitra pravakrita pravaktra cha bhavata matusudana chakte mahitale deva vinashtam kah pravakshyati. Translation. My dear Lord Achyuta, there is no speaking creator and creator, protector of supreme religious principles other than your Lordship, either on the earth or even in the assembly of Lord Brahma, where the personified Vedas reside. Thus, my dear Lord Madhusudana, when you, who are the very creator, protector, and speaker of spiritual knowledge, abandon the earth, who will again speak this lost knowledge? Text 7. Tattvam naha sarva dharmaya dharmastvat bhakti lakshanaha yatha yasya vidhiyata tatha varnaya me prabho. Translation. Therefore, my Lord, since you are the knower of all religious principles, please describe to me the human beings who may execute the path of loving service to you and how such service is to be rendered. Text 8. Śrī Kṛṣṇa Uvacha Itham sabhratya mukyena prashtaha sa bhagavan harihi pritakshemaya martyanam dharman naha sanatanan. Translation. Śrī Kṛṣṇa Goswami said, Śrī Uddhava, the best of devotees, thus inquired from the Lord. Hearing his question, the personality of Godhead, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, was pleased, and for the welfare of all conditioned souls spoke those religious principles that are eternal. Text 9. Śrī Bhagavan Vacha Dharmya esha tava prashno naishreya sakaro nirnam Varṇāśrama chara vatam Tamudava nibodhame. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Uddhava, your question is faithful to religious principles, and thus gives rise to the highest perfection of life, pure devotion and service for both ordinary human beings and the followers of the Varṇāśrama system. Now please learn from me those supreme religious principles. Purport. The word Shreyasakara indicates that which awards the highest perfection of life, Krishna consciousness, which the Lord is explaining to Śrī Uddhava. When considering religious principles, ordinary human beings remain bogged down in sectarian mundane considerations. The process that awards the highest perfection of life should be considered the most auspicious of human beings. The Varṇāśrama system is the most scientific presentation of religiosity on the earth, and those who are most perfect in that system come to the point of Krishna consciousness or dedicating everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Text 10. Ādau Kṛta-yuge varno nirnam Haṁsa iti smritaha Kṛta-kṛtyaha prajajatya tasmat Kṛta-yugam viduhu. Translation. In the beginning, in Satya-yuga, there is only one social class, called Haṁsa, to which all human beings belong. In that age, all people are unalloyed devotees of the Lord from birth, and thus learned scholars call this first age Kṛta-yuga, or the age in which all religious duties are perfectly fulfilled. Purport. It is understood from this verse that the supreme religious principle is unalloyed surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Satya-yuga, there is no influence of the lower modes of nature, and therefore all human beings belong to the highest social order called Haṁsa, in which one comes under the direct supervision of the Personality of Godhead. In the modern age, people are crying out for social equality, but unless all human beings are situated in the mode of goodness, which is the position of purity and unalloyed devotion, social equality is not possible. As the lower modes of nature become prominent, secondary religious principles arise, by which people may be gradually elevated to the pure stage of unalloyed surrender to God. In Satya-yuga, there are no inferior human beings, and thus there is no need of secondary religious principles. Everyone directly takes to the unalloyed service of the Lord, fulfilling perfectly all religious obligations. In Sanskrit, one who perfectly executes all duties is called Kṛta, as mentioned in this verse. Therefore, Satya-yuga is called Kṛta-yuga, or the age of perfect religious action. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the word Ādau in the beginning refers to the moment of universal creation. In other words, the Varṇāśrama system is not a recent concoction but naturally arose at the time of creation and should therefore be accepted by all intelligent human beings. Text 11. Vedaha pranava evagre dharmo hamvrasharupadrik upasate taponishta hamsam hammuktabhilbishaha. Translation. In Satya-yuga, the undivided Veda is expressed by the syllable Om, and I am the only object of mental activities. I become manifest as the four-legged bull of religion, and thus the inhabitants of Satya-yuga, fixed in austerity and free from all sins, worship me as Lord Haṁsa. Purport. The bull of religion is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tapaha saucham daya satya iti padaha krite kritaha. In the age of Satya, truthfulness, your four legs were established by the four principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. Shri Vyasadeva divided the one Veda into four, the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Vedas, at the end of Dwapara Yuga, but in Satya-yuga the whole of Vedic knowledge is easily understood by everyone simply by vibrating the syllable Om. In this age, there are no ritualistic or pious activities such as sacrifice, since everyone is sinless, austere, and fully engaged in worshipping the Personality of Godhead, Lord Haṁsa, through the process of meditation. Text 12. Tretā-yuge mahabhaga prananme hritayatrai vidya pradurabho tasya aham asam trivarnmakaha. Translation. O greatly fortunate one, at the beginning of Tretā-yuga, Vedic knowledge appeared from my heart, which is the abode of the air of life, in three divisions as Rig, Sama, and Yajur. Then from that knowledge I appeared as threefold sacrifice. O greatly fortunate, at the beginning of Tretā-yuga, Vedic knowledge appeared from my heart, which is the abode of the air of life, in three divisions as Rig, Sama, and Yajur. Then from that knowledge I appeared as threefold sacrifice. Purport. In Tretā-yuga, the bull of religion loses one leg and only 75% of religious principles are manifested. Represented by the three principal Vedas, Rig, Sama, and Yajur, the Lord appears in the process of threefold Vedic sacrifice. The three divisions are understood as follows. The Hota priest offers oblations into the fire and chants the Rig Veda. The Uddhava priest chants the Sama Veda, and the Atharva priest, who arranges the sacrificial ground, altar, etc., chants the Yajur Veda. In Tretā-yuga, such sacrifice is the authorized process for spiritual perfection. The word pranat in this verse refers to the universal form of the Personality of Godhead. This form is further described in the following verses. Text 13. Vipra kshatriya vichudra mukha bahuru padajaha vairajat purusha jata ya atma chara lakshanaha. Translation. In Tretā-yuga, the four social orders were manifested from the universal form of the Personality of Godhead. The Brahmins appeared from the Lord's face, the Kshatriyas from the Lord's arms, the Vaishyas from the Lord's thighs, and the Shudras from the legs of that mighty form. Each social division was recognized by its particular duties and behavior. Text 14. Gṛhāśramo jaghanato brahmacaryam rado mama vakshah stadadvane vasaha sannyasa shirasi stitaha. Translation. The married order of life appeared from the loins of my universal form, and the celibate students came from my heart. The forest-dwelling retired order of life appeared from my chest, and the renounced order of life was situated within the head of my universal form. Purport. There are two classes of brahmacārī life. The Naishtika brahmacārī remains celibate throughout life, whereas the Upakurana brahmacārī marries upon finishing student life. One who remains perpetually celibate is situated within the heart of Lord Vishnu. But those brahmacharis who eventually marry are situated within the loins of the universal form of the Lord. The word Vanivasaha refers to Vanaprastha, or the retired order of life, which is situated on the chest of the Lord. Text 15. Varṇānaṁ āśramanam cha janma bhumi anusharinihi asan prakritayornam nichayar nichottama tamaha. Translation. The various occupational and social divisions of human society appeared according to inferior and superior natures manifest in the situation of the individual's birth. The various occupational and social divisions of human society appeared according to inferior and superior natures manifest in the situation of the individual's birth. Purport. According to Śrīla Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Brahmins and Sannyasis, being situated on the head of the universal form of the Lord, are considered to be the most qualified, whereas the Shudras and gṛhasthas, being on the legs of or loins of the Personality of Godhead, are considered to be the lowest position. A living entity is born with a certain amount of intelligence, beauty, and social opportunity, and he is therefore situated in a particular occupational and social position within the Varṇāśrama system. Ultimately, such positions are external designations, but since the majority of human beings are conditioned by the external energy of the Lord, they should act according to the scientific Varṇāśrama divisions until they reach the stage of Jivan-mukta, liberated life. Text 16. Samodamastapaha saucham santoshaha kshantir arjavam matbhaktischa daya satyam brahma prakritayastvamam maha. Translation. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, cleanliness, satisfaction, tolerance, simple, straightforwardness, devotion to me, mercy, and truthfulness are the natural qualities of the Brahmins. Text 17. Tejo balam diritihi sauryam titikshaudaryam udyamaha sthairyam brahmanyam aishvaryam kshatra Kṛta-yuga. Translation. Dynamic power, bodily strength, determination, heroism, tolerance, generosity, great endeavor, steadiness, devotion to the Brahmins, and leadership are the natural qualities of the Kshatriyas. Text 18. Astikyam dana nishtacha adambo brahma sevanam atushtir athopachayair vaishya prakritayastvamaha. Translation. Faith in Vedic civilization, dedication to charity, freedom from hypocrisy, service to the Brahmins, and perpetually desiring to accumulate more money are the natural qualities of the Vaishyas. Purport. Atushtir arthopachayaihi indicates that a Vaishya is never satisfied with any amount of wealth and always wants to accumulate more. On the other hand, he is dana-nishta, or dedicated to charitable work. Brahma Sevi, always engaged in assisting the Brahmins, and adamba, free from hypocrisy. This is due to astikyam, or complete faith in the Vedic way of life, and confidence that one will be rewarded or punished in the next life for one's present activities. The fervent desire of the Vaishyas to accumulate wealth is not the same as ordinary material greed, because it is purified and tempered by the superior qualities mentioned in this verse. Text 19. Sushrushanam dvijagavam devanam chapyamayaya tatra labdhena santoshaha shudra prakritayastvimaha. Translation. Service without duplicity to the Brahmins, cows, demigods, and other worshipable personalities, and complete satisfaction with whatever income is obtained in such service are the natural qualities of Shudras. Pervert, when the entire social order is functioning properly according to Vedic standards, everyone is happy and satisfied. Although the Shudras are to be satisfied with whatever income they obtain through their service, they never lack the necessities of life, because the other orders of society such as Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are required to be abundantly generous, and the Brahmins are well known for being the most merciful of all. Therefore, if all social classes obey the Vedic injunctions, there will be a new and blissful life for the entire human society under the guidance of Krishna consciousness. Text 20. Asaucham anritam steyam nastikyam shuksha vigraha vasan kamaha krodascha tarshascha sabhavon Yavasasainam. Translation. Dirtiness, dishonesty, thievery, faithlessness, useless quarrel, lust, anger, and hankering constitute the nature of those in the lowest position outside the Varṇāśrama system. Purport. Here the Lord describes those who reside outside the scientific social system called Varṇāśrama. In Europe and America, we have particularly observed that the standards of cleanliness are abominable even among so-called educated persons. Going without bathing and the use of indecent language are common. On the modern age, people whimsically speak whatever they like, dispensing with all authority, and there is therefore very little truthfulness or true wisdom. Similarly, in both the capitalistic and communistic countries, everyone is busily engaged in stealing and robbing from everyone else in the name of business, taxation, or outright crime. People are not confident of the kingdom of God, nor of their own eternal nature, and thus their faith is very weak. Moreover, since modern human beings are not very interested in Krishna consciousness, they constantly quarrel, bicker, and fight over completely insignificant issues relating to the material body. Thus, at the slightest provocation, there are huge wars and massacres. Lust, anger, and hankering have become practically unlimited in Kṛta-yuga. The symptoms and characteristics mentioned here can be abundantly observed throughout the world. Wherever people have fallen away from the Varṇāśrama system because of sinful habits such as animal killing, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling, the great majority of human beings have become chandalas or untouchables. Text 21. Ahimsa satyam ashteyam akama krodha lobhata bhuta priya hiteha cha dharmoyam sarva varnikaha. Translation. Non-violence, truthfulness, honesty, desire for the happiness and welfare of all others, and freedom from lust, anger, and greed constitute duties for all members of society. Non-violence, truthfulness, honesty, desire for the happiness and welfare of others, and freedom from lust, anger, and greed constitute duties for all members of society. Purport. The word Sarva Varnika indicates that the above-mentioned principles constitute general piety, which should be observed by all members of society, even those outside the Varṇāśrama system. We practically find that even in societies that have fallen away from the Varṇāśrama system, the above-mentioned principles are honored and encouraged. Such principles do not constitute a specific part of path of liberation, but are perennial virtues in human society. Text 22. Dvitiyam prapyanupurvyaj janmopanayanam dvijaha vasan gurukule danto brahmacārī chahutaha. Translation. The twice-born member of society achieves second birth through the sequence of purificatory ceremonies, culminating in Gayatri initiation. Being summoned by the spiritual master, he should reside within the Guru's ashrama and with a self-controlled mind carefully study the Vedic literature. Purport. The term Dvija or twice-born here indicates the three superior classes, named Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, who all receive the Gayatri mantra, which signifies their second birth through spiritual initiation. One's first birth is biological or seminal and does not necessarily indicate that one is intelligent or enlightened. A young Brahmana boy, if qualified, may be initiated with Gayatri Mantra at the age of 12, and Kshatriyas and Vaishyas a few years later. In order to become enlightened with spiritual knowledge, the boy resides within the Gurukula or ashrama of the spiritual master. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness has established similar Gurukulas all over the world and is issuing a great call to civilized human beings to arrange for the proper education of their children. Every young boy and girl should learn to be self-controlled and should become enlightened through study of authorized Vedic literatures. In this way, unlike ordinary animals, insects, fish and birds, etc., an enlightened human being may take birth twice, thus become perfect in the knowledge that leads to ultimate liberation. The word Anupurvyat in this verse indicates the system of samskaras or purificatory rites beginning with Garbhodhan samskaras, or the purification of the sexual act. Generally, Shudras and those who do not follow the Vedic system are not attracted to such purificatory ceremonies. Therefore, they remain ignorant of spiritual life and envious of the bona fide spiritual master. Those whose character have been civilized by a systematic cleansing process give up the tendency to be argumentative and whimsical and instead become submissive and eager to learn in the presence of a bona fide spiritual master. Text 23. Mikhalajina dantaksha brahmasutra kamandalun Jatiro dauta datvaso rakta pitha kushandatha. Translation. The brahmacārī should regularly dress with a belt of straw and deerskin garments. He should wear matted hair, carry a rod and water pot, and he be decorated with aksha beads and a sacred thread. Carrying pure kusha grass in his hand, he should never accept a luxurious or sensuous sitting place. He should not unnecessarily polish his teeth, nor should he bleach, and iron his cloth. So, purport. The word adhauta vasa indicates that a renounced brahmacārī is not concerned with a glistening smile to attract the opposite sex, nor does he pay much attention to his outer garments. Brahmacārī life is meant for austerity and obedience to the spiritual master, so that later in life, when one becomes a businessman, politician, or intellectual brahmana, one will be able to call upon resources of character, discipline, self-control, austerity, and humility. Student life, as described here, is far different from the mindless hedonism known as modern education. Of course, in the modern age, Krishna-conscious brahmacharis cannot artificially adopt the ancient dress and ritualistic duties described here, but the essential values of self-control, purity, and obedience to a bona fide spiritual master are just as necessary today as they were in Vedic times. Text 24. Snana bhojana homeshu japo charecha vagyataha na chindyanna karomani Kakshopasthagathanyapi. Translation. A brahmacārī should always remain silent while bathing, eating, attending sacrificial performances, chanting japa, or passing stool and urine. He should not cut his nails and hair, including the armpit and pubic hair. Purport. Narada Muni gives a similar technical description of Vedic brahmacārī life in Canto 7, Chapter 12 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 25. Reto navakiriddato brahma vratadaraha swayam avakirneva gahyapshu yata sustripadam japet. Translation. When observing the vow of celibate brahmacārī life, should never pass semen. If the semen by chance spills out by itself, the brahmacārī should immediately take bath in water, control his breath by pranayam, and chant the Gayatri mantra. Agni Arkacharya Go Vipra Guru Virtha Suran Suchihi Samahita Upasita Sante Dveyata Vagjapan. Translation. Purified and fixed in consciousness, the brahmacārī should worship the fire god, sun, acharya, cows, brahmins, guru, elderly, respectable persons, and demigods. He should perform such worship at sunrise and sunset without speaking but by silently chanting or murmuring the appropriate mantras. Text 27. Acharyam mam vijaniyam Nava manyeta karhichit namartya bhutya suyeta sarva deva mayo guruhu. Translation. One should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all demigods. Purport. This verse appears in Chaitanya Charitamrita. His Divine Grace Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvijakacarya Ashtottara Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has commented on this verse as follows. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by Lord Kṛṣṇa when he was questioned by Uddhava regarding the four social and spiritual orders of society. He was specifically instructing how a brahmacārī should behave under the care of a spiritual master. A spiritual master is not an enjoyer of facilities offered by his disciples. He is like a parent. Without the attentive service of his parents, a child cannot grow to manhood. Similarly, without the care of the spiritual master, one cannot rise to the plane of transcendental service. The spiritual master is also called acharya or a transcendental professor of spiritual science. Manu Samhita explains the duties of an acharya, describing that a bona fide spiritual master accepts charge of disciples, teach them the Vedic knowledge with all its intricacies, and gives them their second birth. The ceremony performed to initiate a disciple into the study of spiritual science is called upaniti, or the function that brings one nearer to the spiritual master. One who cannot be brought nearer to a spiritual master cannot have a sacred thread, and thus he is indicated to be a Shudra. The sacred thread worn on the body of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya is a symbol of initiation by the spiritual master. It is worth nothing if worn merely to boast of high parentage. The duty of the spiritual master is to initiate the disciple with the sacred thread ceremony, and after this samskara or purificator process, the spiritual master actually begins to teach the disciple about the Vedas. A person born a Shudra is not barred from such spiritual initiation, provided he is approved by the spiritual master, who is duly authorized to award the disciple the right to be a Brahmana. If he finds him perfectly qualified in the Vayu Purana, an Acharya is defined as one who knows the import of all Vedic literature, explains the purpose of the Vedas, abides by their rules and regulations, and teaches his disciples to act in the same way. Only out of his immense compassion does the personality of Godhead reveal himself as the spiritual master. Therefore, in the dealings of an acharya, there are no activities but those of transcendental loving service to the Lord. He is the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead. It is worthwhile to take shelter of such a steady devotee who is called Ashraya Vigraha, or the manifestation or form of the Lord, of whom one must take shelter. If one possesses himself as an acharya but does not have an attitude of servitorship to the Lord, he must be considered an offender. And this offensive attitude disqualifies him from being an acharya. The bona fide spiritual master always engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By this test, he is known to be a direct manifestation of the Lord and as a genuine representative of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Such a spiritual master is known as Acharya Deva, influenced by an envious temperament and dissatisfied because of an attitude of sense gratification. Mundaners criticize a real acharya. In fact, however, a bona fide acharya is not different from the personality of Godhead, and therefore to envy such an acharya is to envy the personality of Godhead himself. This will produce an effect subversive to transcendental realization. As mentioned previously, a disciple should always respect the spiritual master as a manifestation of Śrī Kṛṣṇa. But at the same time, one should always remember that a spiritual master is never authorized to imitate the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. False spiritual masters pose themselves as identical with Śrī Kṛṣṇa in every respect to exploit the sentiments of their disciples. But such impersonalists can only mislead their disciples, for their ultimate aim is to become one with the Lord. This is against the principles of the devotional cult. The real Vedic philosophy is Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, which establishes everything to be simultaneously one with the different from the personality of Godhead. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami confirms that this is the real position of a bona fide spiritual master, and says that one should always think of the spiritual master in terms of his intimate relationship with Mukunda, Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha has clearly defined that a pure devotee's observation of the spiritual master and Lord Shiva as one with the personality of Godhead exists in terms of their being very dear to the Lord, not identical with him in all respects. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha has clearly defined that a pure devotee's observation of the spiritual master and Lord Shiva as one with the personality of Godhead exists in terms of their being very dear to the Lord, not identical with him in all respects. Following in the footsteps of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami, later acharyas like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur have confirmed the same truth. In his prayers to the spiritual master, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur confirms that all the revealed scriptures accept the spiritual master to be identical with the personality of Godhead, because he is a very dear and confidential servant of the Lord. Gaudiya Vaishnava therefore worship Srila Gurudev, the spiritual master, in the light of his being the servitor of the personality of Godhead. In all the ancient literatures of devotional service, and in the more recent songs of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and other unalloyed Vaishnavas, the spiritual master is always considered to be either one of the confidential associates of Srimati Radharani or a manifested representation of Srila Nityananda Prabhu. Text 28. Sayam Tarapaniya Paiksham Tasmai Nivedayat Yachanyadapi Anudyatam Upayunjita Samyataha. Translation. In the morning and evening one should collect foodstuffs and other articles and deliver them to the spiritual master. Then, being self-controlled, one should accept for oneself that which is allotted by the Acharya. Purport: one who desires to receive the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master should not be eager to accumulate the paraphernalia of sense gratification. Rather, whatever one is able to collect, one should offer at the lotus feet of the Acharya. Being self-controlled, one should humbly accept that which is allotted by the Lord, which is allotted by a bona fide spiritual master. Every living entity must ultimately be trained to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But until one has become expert in the techniques of spiritual service, one should offer everything to the spiritual master, whose complete relies in the process of worshipping the Lord. When the spiritual master sees that the disciple is advanced in Krishna consciousness, he then engages the disciple in directly worshipping the Personality of Godhead. The bona fide spiritual master does not use anything for his personal sense gratification, and entrusts to his disciple only as much material opulence as the disciple can properly offer to the lotus feet of the Lord. The example may be given that when an ordinary father tries to train his son in business and other material activities. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11, Chapter 17, Text 27. Sayam pratara upaniya vaiksham tasmai nivedayat yachanyadapi anujatam upayunjita samyataha. Translation. In the morning and evening, one should collect foodstuffs and other articles and deliver them to the spiritual master. Then, being self-controlled, one should accept for oneself that which is allotted by the Acharya. Purport: one who desires to receive the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master should not be eager to accumulate the paraphernalia of sense gratification. Rather, whatever one is able to collect, one should offer at the lotus feet of the Acharya. Being self-controlled, one should humbly accept that which is allotted by the bona fide spiritual master. Every living entity must ultimately be trained to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but until one has become expert in the techniques of spiritual service, one should offer everything to the spiritual master, who is completely realized in the process of worshipping the Lord. When the spiritual master sees that the disciple is advanced in Krishna consciousness, he then engages the disciple in directly worshipping the Personality of Godhead. The bona fide spiritual master does not use anything for his personal sense gratification, and entrusts to his disciple only as much material opulence as the disciple can properly offer to the lotus feet of the Lord. The example may be given that when an ordinary father tries to train his son in business and other material activities, he entrusts to the son only as much wealth as the son can intelligently engage in profitable enterprises, without foolishly wasting the father's hard-earned money. Similarly, the bona fide spiritual master teaches his disciple to worship the Lord, and an immature disciple must simply deliver everything to the lotus feet of the Guru. Just as an immature child does not keep a personal bank account but rather receives his maintenance from the father, who trains the son to be responsible. If one cheats oneself by defying the order of a bona fide spiritual master, Lord Kṛṣṇa, one certainly becomes a non-devotee or sense enjoyer and falls from the spiritual path. Therefore, one should be trained to serve a bona fide spiritual master and thus become mature in Krishna consciousness. Text 29. Sushrushamana acharyam sarupasita vichavat jnanam sayasanastanairnati dura kritanjalihi. Translation. While engaged in serving the spiritual master, one should remain as a humble servant, and thus when the Guru is walking, the servant should humbly walk behind. When the Guru lies down to sleep, the servant should also lie down nearby. And when the Guru has awakened, the servant should sit near him, massaging his lotus feet and rendering other similar services. When the Guru is sitting down in his asana, the servant should stand nearby with folded hands, awaiting the Guru's order. In this way, one should always worship the spiritual master. Text 13. Evam vritto gurukule vaset bhoga vivarjitaha vidya samapyatyavat viprat-pratam akhanditam. Translation: until the student has completed his Vedic education, he should remain engaged in the ashrama of the spiritual master, should remain completely free of material sense gratification, and should not break his vow of celibacy brahmacārī. Purport: this verse describes the upakurvani brahmacārī who enters gṛhastha ashrama family life after completing his Vedic education. The word evam vrittaha indicates that although one may eventually marry and become prominent in society as an intellectual, politician, or businessman, during student life one must remain without false prestige as a humble servant of the bona fide spiritual master. The Naishtika brahmacārī who never marries is described in the following verse. Text 31. Yadyasau chandasam lokam arokshan brahma vishtapam gurave vinyasetiham svatyayartham brahataha. Translation: if the brahmacārī student desires to descend to the Mahaloka or Brahmaloka planets, then he should completely surrender his activities to the spiritual master and, observing the powerful vow of perpetual celibacy, dedicate himself to superior Vedic studies. Purport: one who desires the supreme perfection of life must engage his body, mind, and words in the service of a bona fide spiritual master. One desiring elevation to spiritual planets, such as Brahmaloka and Mahaloka, must fully engage in the spiritual master's service. We can thus imagine the sincerity of purpose and service required to achieve the Krishna-loka planet, which lies far beyond the material universe. Text 32. Agnau gurau atmanicha sarva bhuteshu mam param aprithavirupasita brahma varchasvya kalmashaha. Translation: thus enlightened in Vedic knowledge by service to the spiritual master, freed from all sins and duality, one should worship me as the super soul, as I appear within fire, the spiritual master, one's own self, and all living entities. Thus enlightened in Vedic knowledge by service to the spiritual master, freed from all sins and duality, one should worship me as the super soul, as I appear within fire, the spiritual master, one's own self, and all living entities. Purport: one becomes glorious and enlightened by faithfully serving a bona fide spiritual master who is expert in the Vedic way of life. Thus purified, one never engaged in sinful activities, which immediately extinguishes the fire of spiritual enlightenment. Nor does one become foolish and small-minded, trying to exploit material nature for personal sense gratification. A purified human being is aprita-kri, or without consciousness of duality, because he has been trained to observe the Supreme Personality of Godhead within all things. Such sublime consciousness should be systematically taught throughout the world so that human society will become peaceful and sublime. Text 33. Srinam nirikṣanas paksha samlapa svela nardikam pranino mituni bhutan agṛhastho gṛhastyajet. Translation: those who are not married, sannyasis, vanaprasthas, and brahmacāris should never associate with women by glancing, touching, conversing, joking, or sporting. Neither should they ever associate with any living entity engaged in sexual activities. Purport: praninaha indicates all living entities, whether birds, bees, or human beings. Among most species of life, sexual intercourse is preceded by diverse mating rituals. In human society, all types of entertainment, books, music, films, and all places of amusement, restaurants, shopping centers, resorts, are designed to stimulate the sexual urge and create an aura of romance. One who is not married, a sannyasi, brahmacārī, or vanaprastha, should rigidly avoid anything related to sex, and of course should never see any living entity austerity, whether bird, insect, or human, engaging in the various phases of sexual intercourse. When a man jogs with a woman and intimate sexually charged atmosphere is immediately created, and this should also be avoided for those aspiring to practice celibacy. Even a householder who becomes attached to such activities will also fall down into the darkness of ignorance. Text 34-35. Saucham achamanam snanam sankhyopaspirmamarchanam tirtha seva japo sprishya bhakshya sambhapasya varjanam sarvashrama prayuktoham yam niyamaha kulanandana madbhavaha sarvabhuteshu manovakaya samyamaha. Translation. My dear Uddhava, general cleanliness, washing the hands, bathing, performing religious services at sunrise, noon, and sunset, worshipping, visiting holy places, chanting japa, avoiding that which is untouchable, uneatable, or not to be discussed, and remembering my existence within all living entities as the Supersoul. This principle should be followed by all members of society through regulation of the mind, words, and body. Text 36. Evam pratvurata daro brahmano gniriva jvalan madbhaktas tivrata pasa dagdha karmasayo malaha. Translation. A Brahmana observing the great vow of celibacy becomes brilliant like fire, and by serious austerity burns to ashes the propensity to perform material activities. Free from the contamination of material desire, he becomes my devotee. Purport. The process of liberation is described in this verse. Once when Śrīla Prabhupada was traveling by airplane, a fellow passenger who happened to be a priest told him that he had seen his disciples and found them bright-faced. Śrīla Prabhupada was fond of relating this incident. The spirit soul is more brilliant than the sun, and as the process of spiritual purification gradually takes effect, even the external form of a devotee becomes effulgent. The glowing fire of spiritual knowledge burns to ashes the mentality of sense gratification, and one naturally becomes austere and disinterested in mundane enjoyment. Among all austerities, the best is celibacy, by which the shackles of material life immediately become slackened. One who is amala, free from material desire, is known as a pure devotee of the Lord. On the path of jnana, karma, and yoga, the mind retains the concept of personal interest, but on the path of pure devotion, the mind is trained to see only the interests of the personality of Godhead. Thus, a pure devotee of the Lord is amala, completely pure. Text 37. Athanantaram avekshan yatha jigyasita gamaha gurave dakshinam dattva snayat gurvanumoditaha. Translation. A brahmacārī who has completed his Vedic education and desires to enter household life should offer proper remuneration to the spiritual master, bathe, cut his hair, put on proper clothes, and so on. Then, taking permission from the guru, he should go back to his home. Purport. This verse describes the process called samavartana, or returning to one's home after finishing Vedic education in the āśrama of the spiritual master. One who cannot concentrate all of his desires in the devotional service of the Lord is attracted to householder life, and if this attraction is not regulated, one will fall down. Being covered by the ignorance of fruitive activities and mental speculation, a living entity seeks enjoyment outside the devotional service of the Supreme Lord and becomes a non-devotee. One who takes a family life must rigidly follow the Vedic rules and regulations in order to avoid the collapse of his spiritual determination. One who enjoys intimate sense gratification with women must become duplicitous in his dealings with others and consequently falls down from the platform of simple pure life. When the mind is disturbed by lust, one begins to resent the principle of submission to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pure devotee, and the dark clouds of one's offensive mentality completely covers the light of spiritual knowledge. One should dovetail his propensity to love someone by serving the lotus feet of a pure devotee. As stated in Vedic literature, one who worships Govinda, Lord Kṛṣṇa, but does not worship his devotee is not to be considered an advanced Vaishnava, rather he is to be considered a proud hypocrite. Text 38. Graham vanam vopavishet pravrajet vadvijotamaha āśramam gachin nanyathamat parascharet. Translation. A brahmacārī desiring to fulfill his material desires should live at home with his family, and a householder who is eager to purify his consciousness should enter the forest, whereas a purified brahmana should accept the renounced order of life. One who is not surrendered to me should move progressively from one āśrama to another, never acting otherwise. Purport. Those who are not surrendered devotees of the Lord must rigidly observe the regulations governing one's authorized social status. There are 4 social divisions of life, namely brahmacārī, gṛhastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. One who wants to fulfill material desires should become an ordinary householder, gṛhastha, establish a comfortable residence, and maintain his family. One desiring to accelerate the process of purification may give up his home and business and live in a sacred place with his wife, as indicated here by the word vanam, or forest. There are many sacred forests in India meant for this purpose, such as Vrindavan and Mayapur. The word Dvijottama indicates the Brahmins. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas are all Dvija or initiated in the Gayatri mantra, but the Brahmana is Dvijottama, or the highest among those who have received second birth by spiritual initiation. It is recommended that a purified Brahmana take to the renounced order of life, sannyasa, giving a further contact to his so-called wife. The Brahmana is specially mentioned here since Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are not to take the renounced order of life. Even so, there are many stories in the Bhagavatam wherein great kings retire with their aristocratic wives to the forest to practice the austerities of vanaprastha and thus accelerate the process of purification. The Brahmanas, however, may directly accept the renounced order of life. The words āśramam gachet indicate that one may progressively move from brahmacārī life to gṛhastha life to vanaprastha life and then to sannyasa. The word āśramam emphasizes that one should never remain without an authorized social status, nor should one go backward falling down from a higher position. Those who are not surrendered devotees of the Lord must rigidly observe such injunctions, for otherwise they will quickly become degraded and their sins will place them outside the bounds of authorized human civilization. Lord Kṛṣṇa emphasized here that a non-devotee must rigidly observe the rituals and regulations of Vedic social divisions, whereas the Lord's pure devotee, engaged 24 hours a day in Lord Kṛṣṇa's mission, is transcendental to such divisions. If, however, one performs illicit activities on the strength of being transcendental to Vedic social divisions, one is revealed to be a materialistic neotype and not an advanced devotee of the Lord. An advanced devotee remains aloof from material sense gratification, is not bound by the Vedic social divisions. Thus, even a householder may live very austerely, traveling and preaching Krishna consciousness away from home, and even a sannyasi may sometimes engage women in the devotional service of Lord Kṛṣṇa. The most advanced devotees cannot be restricted by the rituals and regulations of the Varṇāśrama system, and they move freely around the world, distributing love of Godhead. Matpara indicates a pure devotee of the Lord, who always keeps the Lord fixed in his heart and consciousness. One who falls down to become a victim of sense gratification is not fully established on the platform of Matpara and should rigidly observe the social divisions and regulations to remain steady on the platform of pious human life. Text 39. Gṛhastha sadrishim bharyam udvahet ajugupshitam yavyasim tu vayasa yam savarnam anukramat. Translation. One who desires to establish family life should marry a wife of his own caste, who is beyond reproach and younger in age. If one desires to accept many wives, he must marry them after the first marriage, and each wife should be of a successively lower caste. Purport. As stated in the Vedic literature, Tishro Varṇānupurvyena Dvetataikayatha Kramam Brahmana-kshatri Visham Bharyah Svaha Shudra Janmanaha. The purport of this verse is that one's first wife must always be sadrishim, or similar to oneself. In other words, an intellectual man should marry an intellectual wife, a heroic man should marry a heroic wife, a business-minded man should marry a woman who can encourage him in such activities, and a shudra should marry a less intelligent woman. The wife must be beyond reproach in terms of her background and character and should always be younger than oneself, ideally 5 to 10 years younger. If one desires to marry a second wife, then as stated in this verse, by the word Varṇānupurvyena, and in the verse spoken by Lord Kṛṣṇa by the word Anukramat, one must wait until the first marriage is established and then select a second wife from the next lower caste. If one marries a third time, the wife must be again from the next lower caste. For example, a Brahman's first wife will be a Brahmani, his second wife will be from a Kshatriya community, his third wife from a Vaishya community, and fourth wife from the Shudra community. A Kshatriya may first marry a Kshatriya lady and then Vaishya and Shudra ladies. A Vaishya can accept wives from two classes, and a Shudra will accept a wife only from the Shudra class. By this progression of marriages, there will be regulative peace in the family. This Vedic marriage injunctions, as mentioned in the previous verse, are especially for those who are not pure devotees of the Lord. Text 40. Yatyayana danani sarvesham chadvijanmanam pratigraho yapanam cha brahmana saiva yajanam. Translation. All twice-born men, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas must perform sacrifice, study and Vedic literature, and give charity. Only the Brahmins, however, accept charity, teach the Vedic knowledge, and perform sacrifice on behalf of others. Purport. All civilized men must participate in sacrificial performances, give charity, and study the Vedic literature. The best of the twice-born, namely the Brahmins, are specially empowered to lead sacrificial performances on behalf of all members of society, teach everyone Vedic knowledge, and receive everyone's charity. Without the assistance or participation of qualified Brahmins, the lower classes cannot properly study the Vedic literature, perform sacrifices, or give in charity, because they do not have the required intelligence to perfectly execute such functions. When Kshatriyas and Vaishyas take shelter of bona fide Brahmins, they are able to properly execute their respective duties and society functions smoothly and effectively. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11, Chapter 17, Text 41. Pratigraham manyamanas tapaste joyasonudam anyapyam eva jiveta shilairva doshatriktayoho. Translation. A Brahmana who considers that accepting charity from others will destroy his austerity, spiritual influence, and fame should maintain himself by the other two Brahmanical occupations, namely teaching Vedic knowledge and performing sacrifice. If the Brahmana considered that those two occupations also compromise his spiritual position, then he should collect rejected grains in agricultural fields and live without any dependence on others. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord should always remember that the Supreme Personality of Godhead will personally take care of him. As the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupashate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam maham yaham. But those who worship me with devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. A Brahmana should not become a professional beggar for his personal maintenance. In India, there are many so-called Brahmins who sit at the gates of important temples and beg from everyone who comes and goes. If someone does not give a donation, they become angry and chase that person. Similarly, in America, there are many big preachers who collect huge amounts of money by begging on television and radio. If a Brahmana or Vaishnava considers that being a professional beggar is weakening his austerity, destroying his spiritual influence, and giving him a bad reputation, then he should give up that process. One may beg everyone to contribute to the cause of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but one will be diminished in austerity, influence, and reputation by begging for one's personal livelihood. A Brahmana may then take up the task of teaching Vedic knowledge and performing sacrifice, but even such occupations do not bring one to the highest platform of trust in God. A Brahmana who teaches as a means of livelihood may often be curbed in his teaching, and one who performs sacrifice may be manipulated by materialistic worshippers. In this way, a Brahmana may be placed in an embarrassing and compromised position. Therefore, a high-class Brahmana or Vaishnava ultimately will depend completely on the mercy of the Lord for his maintenance. The Lord promises to maintain his devotee, and an advanced Vaishnava never doubts the word of the Lord. Text 42. Brahmanasya hi dehoyam kshudra kamaya neshyate Kṛṣṇāya tapase cheha prityananta sukhaya cha. Translation. The body of a Brahman is not intended to enjoy insignificant material sense gratification. Neither by accepting difficult austerities in his life a Brahmana will enjoy unlimited happiness after death. Purport. One may ask why a Brahmana should voluntarily accept inconvenience in keeping his body and soul together. In this verse, the Lord explains that advanced human life is meant for serious austerity and not for insignificant sense gratification. By spiritual advancement, one is fixed in transcendental bliss on the spiritual platform and gives up useless absorption in the temporary material body. One should remain detached from the material body, accepting only the bare necessity of life. The Brahmins, by accepting a troublesome form of livelihood, never forget that the material body is designed to grow old, become diseased, and die in misery. Thus, remaining alert and transcendental, an advanced Brahmana at the end of his life goes back home, back to Godhead, where he enjoys unlimited spiritual bliss. Without such higher awareness, how can one be considered a qualified Brahmana? Those devotees engaged 24 hours a day in spreading the mission of Lord Kṛṣṇa are beyond the platform of renunciation or sense gratification because they engage everything in Lord Kṛṣṇa's service. The pure devotee of the Lord eats only to get strength for serving the Lord and does not accept either sumptuous or meager food simply for the body's sake. However, everything may be accepted for the Lord, even sumptuous meals. A Brahmana who is not working day and night to spread the glories of the Lord should feel embarrassed to eat sumptuously for his personal sense gratification, but a renounced Vaishnava preacher may accept invitations from all classes of pious people, and just to bless their homes, he will eat the opulent foods they offer to him. Similarly, he sometimes eats sumptuously to get strength for defeating atheists and impersonalists. As stated in Vedic literature, one cannot be a highly qualified Brahmana unless one becomes a devotee of the Lord. And among the devotees, those who are preaching Krishna consciousness are the best, as confirmed by the Lord himself in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Text 43. Silancha Vritya Paritushta Chitto Dharmam Mahantam Virajam Jushanaha Mayi arpitatma grihaiva tishtan nati prasakta samupaiti shantim. Translation. A Brahmana householder should remain satisfied in mind by gleaning rejected grains from agricultural fields and marketplaces. Keeping himself free of personal desire, he should practice magnanimous religious principles with consciousness absorbed in me. In this way, a Brahmana may stay at home as a householder without very much attachment and thus achieve liberation. Purport. Mahantam refers to magnanimous religious principles such as very hospitable, receiving guests, even those who are uninvited and unexpected. Householders must always be magnanimous and charitable to others, being alert to curb unnecessary affection and attachment in family life. In the past, very renounced Brahmana householders would collect grains that had fallen on the ground in the marketplace or those that had been left behind in the fields after harvesting. The most important item here is Maya Arpitatma, or fixing the mind in Lord Kṛṣṇa. Despite his material situation, anyone who constantly meditates upon the Lord can become a liberated soul. As stated in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Iha yasya harir dasya karmana manasajira nikilashapi avastasu jivam muktaha sauchate. A person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna, with his body, mind, intelligence, and words, is a liberated person, even within the material world, although he may be engaged in many so-called material activities. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11, Chapter 17, Text 44. Samudharanti vipram siddhantam matparayanam tanudharishya nachirad apatpyo nairivarnavat. Translation. Just as the ship rescues those who have fallen into the ocean, similarly I very quickly rescue from all calamities those persons who uplift Brahmins and devotees suffering in a poverty-stricken condition. Purport. The Lord has described how Brahmins and devotees achieve the perfection of life, and now a similar perfection is offered to those who utilize their materialistic wealth to relieve the poverty-stricken condition of devotees and Brahmins. Although one may neglect the devotional service of the Lord to pursue a material life of sense gratification, one can rectify one's position by dedicating one's hard-earned money to the service of the Lord. Seeing the difficult austerities accepted by saintly persons, a pious person should make arrangements for their comfort. Just as a boat saves hopeless people who have fallen into the ocean, similarly the Lord uplifts persons who have hopelessly fallen into the ocean of material attachment if they have been charitable to the Brahmins and devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam Text 45. Sarvaha samudharit raja piteva vyasanat prajaha atmanam diro yatha gaja patir gajan. Translation. Just as the chief bull elephant protects all other elephants in his herd and defends himself as well, similarly, the fearless king, just like a father, must save all of the citizens from difficulty and also protect himself. Purport. Lord Kṛṣṇa, having concluded his discussion of Brahmanical duties, now describes the character and activities of a king. Protecting all of the citizens from difficulty is an essential duty for the king. Text 46. Evam vidho narapatir vimane narkavarchasa vidhuye hasubham kritsnam mintrena saha modate. Translation. An earthly king who protects himself and all citizens by removing all sins from his sanctum will certainly enjoy his Lord Indra in airplanes as brilliant as the sun. Text 47. Siddhan vipro vani kritya panyaireva padam taret Khadyena va padakranto na svavritya kathanchana. Translation. If a Brahmana cannot support himself for his regular duties and is thus suffering, he may adopt the occupation of a merchant and overcome his destitute condition by buying and selling material things. If he continues to suffer extreme poverty even as a merchant, then he may adopt the occupation of a kshatriya, taking sword in hand. But he cannot in any circumstance become like a dog, accepting an ordinary master. Purport. Svavritya, or a dog's profession, refers to the Shudras who cannot live without accepting a master. A destitute Brahmana who is suffering intolerably may become a merchant and then a kshatriya, but may never take the position of a Shudra by working in a company or accepting a master. Although a kshatriya is ordinarily considered more elevated than a Vaishya, the Lord here recommends that distressed Brahmins first accept the Vaishya occupation since it is not violent. Text 48. Vaishya vritya tura chanyo Jiven mrgaya padi charedva viprarupena nasvavritya kathanchana. Translation. A king or other member of the royal order who cannot maintain himself by his normal occupation may act as a Vaishya, may live by hunting, or may act as a Brahmana by teaching others Vedic knowledge, but he may not under any circumstance adopt the profession of a Shudra. Text 49. Shudra vrittim bhajet Vaishya Shudraha karu kata kriya Kṛṣṇan muktana garhyena vrittim nipsheta karmana. Translation. A Vaishya or mercantile man who cannot maintain himself may adopt the occupation of a Shudra, and a Shudra who cannot find a master can engage in simple activities like making baskets and mats of straw. However, all members of society who have adopted inferior occupations in emergency situations must give up those substitute occupations when the difficulties have passed. Text 50. Vedatyaya svadha svaha bali annadayir yathodayam devarshi pitribhutani madrupani anvaham yajat. Translation. One in the gṛhastha order of life should daily worship the sage by Vedic study, the forefathers by offering the mantra Svada, the demigods by chanting Swaha, all living entities by offering shares of one's meals, and human beings by offering grains and water. Thus considering the demigods, sage, forefathers, living entities, and human beings to be manifestations of my potency, one should daily perform these 5 sacrifices. Purport. The Lord again discusses the duties of those in the household order of life. Obviously, the 5 ritualistic daily sacrifices mentioned here are meant for those who are not pure devotees of the Lord, and who thus have to counteract their exploitation of material nature by the above-mentioned sacrifices. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is training householders, sannyasis, brahmacāris, and vanaprasthas to engage 24 hours a day in the loving service of the Lord. Those who are full-time missionary workers in ISKCON have no further obligations or sacrifices to perform, as confirmed in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Devarshi bhutabdanarnam pitranam na kinkaro nayam nricharajan sarvatmana yaha saranam saranyam gato mukundam parivrityakartam. Anyone who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligation, and has taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sage, general living entities, family members, humankind, and or forefathers. Text 51. Yatsrichayo papanenam sukleno parjitena va danena pidayan brachan nyayena eva harit cartoon. Translation: a householder should comfortably maintain his dependents either with money that comes of its own accord or with that gathered by honest execution of one's duties. According to one's means, one should perform sacrifices and other religious ceremonies. Purport: the Lord here describes the religious duties that are to be performed as far as possible according to one's means and when there is opportunity. Text 52. Kutumbeshu nasajjeta na pramadyet kutumbe api vipaschinasvaram pasyat adrishtam api drishtavad. Translation: a householder taking care of many dependent family members should not become materially attached to them, nor should he become mentally unbalanced, considering himself to be the Lord. An intelligent householder should see that all possible future happiness, just like that which he has already experienced, is temporary. Purport: a family man often acts like a lord, protecting his wife, ordering his children, maintaining servants, grandchildren, domestic animals, and so forth. The words na prama yet kutumbi api indicate that although one acts like a little lord, surrounded by his family, servants, and friends, one should not through false pride become mentally unbalanced, considering oneself to be the actual lord. The word vipaschit indicates that one should remain sober and intelligent, never forgetting oneself to be the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. Householders of the upper, middle, and lower classes become attached to different types of sense gratification. In any economic or social class, however, one should remember that all material enjoyment, either here or in the next life, is temporary and ultimately useless. A responsible householder should guide his family members and other dependents back home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. One should not become a false and puffed up lord for a brief span of time, for then one will remain bound up along with his family members in the cycle of repeated birth and death. Text 53. Putra darata bantunam sangamaha panta sangamaha anudeham viyanti te swapno nidra nugoyatha. Translation: the association of children, wife, relatives, and friends is just like the brief meeting of travelers. With each change of body, one is separated from all such associates, just as one loses the objects one possesses in a dream when the dream is over. Purport: Panta Sangama indicates the momentary association of travelers at hotels, restaurants, tourist spots, or in more traditional cultures, freshwater wells and walking paths. We are now associated with many relatives, friends, and well-wishers, but as soon as we change our material body, we will immediately be separated from all these associates, just as upon awakening, we are immediately separated from the imaginary situation of a dream. One becomes attached to the sense gratification of one's dream, and similarly, under the spell of the illusory concepts of I and mine, we become attached to so-called relatives and friends who gratify our sense of false ego. Unfortunately, such fleeting egoistic association covers our real knowledge of the Self and the Supreme, and we remain hovering in material illusion, futilely endeavoring for permanent sense gratification. One who remains attached to the bodily concept of family and friends cannot possibly give up the false egoism of I and mine, or I am everything and everything is mine. Without giving up material sense gratification, we cannot become steady on the transcendental platform of devotional service, and therefore we cannot relish the actual flavor of eternal happiness. Unless one becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, accepting Lord Kṛṣṇa as one's only friend, one cannot give up the hankering for temporary and superficial material relationships. A traveler far away from his home and loved ones may strike up superficial conversations with other travelers, but such relationships have no ultimate meaning. One should therefore revive one's lost relationship with Lord Kṛṣṇa. We are constitutionally part and parcel of Lord Kṛṣṇa, who is the reservoir of all spiritual pleasure, and our original relationship with him is full of love and happiness, but because of our desire to enjoy independently from him, we fall down into the confusing, meaningless network of material relationships created by Maya. An intelligent person realizes there is no actual pleasure or satisfaction for the soul on either this planet or any other material planet. Therefore, like a weary traveler exhausted from his journey, he should go back home, back to Godhead for eternal peace, as the faithful servant of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Text 54. Itam parimrishan mukto griheshvati vatvasan na grihair anubhadyita nirmamo nirahan krita. Translation. Deeply considering the actual situation, a liberated soul should live at home just like a guest, without any sense of proprietorship or false ego. In this way, he will not be bound or entangled by domestic affairs. Purport. The word mukta, liberated, refers to one freed from all material attachment. In this status, called mukta sangha, one no longer identifies oneself as a permanent resident of the material world. This liberated status may be attained even by one situated in family life. The only requirement is that one should take up a serious program of Krishna Sankirtana, which includes constant chanting of the holy names of the Lord, worship of the deity, and participation in the Krishna consciousness movement. Without a serious program of Krishna Sankirtana, it is very difficult to give up the iron shackles of attachment to women and the byproducts of such attachment. Text 55. Karma pir graha mithyai ishtvamameva bhaktiman tishtetvanam vopavishet rajavan va parivrajet. Translation. An householder devotee worships me by execution of his family duties, may remain at home, go to a holy place, or if he has a responsible son, take sannyas. Purport. This verse describes the three alternatives for a householder. He may continue at home, or he may take vanaprastha, which involves going to a sacred place with one's wife, or if he has a responsible son to take over his family duties, he may take sannyasa, the renounced order for a definitive solution to the problems of life. In all three ashrams, ultimate success depends on sincere surrender to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the most important qualification one can have is Krishna consciousness. Text 56. Yashtva saktamatirgehe putra vitaishanaturaha strainah kripanadir mutho mamahaniti panchate. Translation. That a householder whose mind is attached to his home and who is thus disturbed by ardent desires to enjoy his money and children, who is lusty after women, who is possessed of a miserly mentality, and who unintelligently thinks everything is mine and I am everything, is certainly bound in illusion. Purport. Although one may try by various analytical or psychological processes to detach the mind from illusory family attachment, one will inevitably be drawn back into the network of material attachment unless the heart is purified by Krishna consciousness. A miserly householder thinks only of his own family or community, without mercy for outsiders. Being egoistic, lusty, attached, and always disturbed by ardent desires to enjoy money and children, a materialistic householder is hopelessly bound in a web of anxiety. Text 57. Ahome pitarau vrithau bharya balatmajatmayaham anathamam dinaham katham jivanti dukkitaha. Translation. O my poor elderly parents, and my wife is a mere infant in her arms, and my other young children, without me they have absolutely no one to protect them, and will suffer unbearably. How can my poor relatives possibly live without me? Text 58. Evam grihasaya kshipta
Hridayo muthadirayam atriptastan anutyayan mritontam vishate tamaha. Thus, because of his foolish mentality, a householder whose heart is overwhelmed by family attachment is never satisfied. Constantly meditating on his relatives, he dies and enters into the darkness of ignorance. Purport: Antam Vishate Tamaha indicates that in his next life, an attached householder will certainly be degraded because of his primitive mentality of bodily attachment, which is called the mutati. In other words, after enjoying the sense gratification of considering oneself the center of everything, one enters into a lower species of life. Somehow or other, we must fix our minds on Lord Kṛṣṇa and come out of the darkness of ignorance to our real life in Krishna consciousness. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 11th Canto, 17th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Kṛṣṇa's Descriptions of the Varṇāśrama system.